what we believe. We're here to say, put your belief into action. And you probably don't believe what we believe, because the pro-life people, the pro-life movement thinks that it's good to vote for legislators who write bills that tell you when, where, and how you can murder someone.
Yeah, I actually agree with you on that.
So most pro-life people are like totally cool with voting for compromisers, when we need to be demanding that these legislators always write a bill that would completely abolish abortion at every stage in this state and refuse to vote for anybody else, because we're just feeding them, you know? We're just encouraging them in their sin. They're sinning by discriminating in their laws, saying you can murder a child after this number of weeks.
I agree with you, man.
Okay, then
I actually agree with you. And everybody in my class, we proactively look at the people we vote for to pick the one that's the most. Actually, I vote only on abortion. I will be honest with you. That's my personal beliefs. If you say you're a Democrat and you will vote to end abortion, I'll vote for Democrat. Republican, it doesn't matter. All the other things are water under the bridge to me. Abortion is mine, most important.
Okay, but do you understand that we need to be very specific? It needs to be not just I'm going to do something against abortion. It's going to be I'm going to literally write a bill that criminalizes abortion as murder, so that women who murder their preborn children will be put to death, that they will be punished like any other murderer in this state.
Yeah.
So that's what, only that, nothing else. Nothing else. So if other people are going to vote for like, oh, there's a 20-week heartbeat, or there's a 20-week bill, like you can murder a child after 20 weeks, or like a heartbeat bill, you can murder them like if they don't have a heartbeat. Those are discriminating against people based on characteristics, physical characteristics, and that's evil. So the pro-life movement keeps voting for that. They keep doing that, and they never do what needs to be done to abolish it. As abolitionists, we don't support that. So we're not on the same page with pro-life people.
Okay.
And also, pro-life people, they continue to go about their business like everything's okay day after day after day, while thousands of children are slaughtered in their nation, while children are being murdered all around them by birth control.
Yeah.
Like, they're not living the same way they would if born people were being murdered all around them, right? They're not living the same way they would if born people were being slaughtered inside killing facilities in this state. So we need to live consistently. We need to have the same standard for both. We can't discriminate, because then we're in sin. So we're saying, you need to wake up. You need to treat this with urgent action. You need to respond to this with urgent action, not just, oh, I'm pro-life, I have this opinion that it's wrong. So we need to take action.
So how do you suggest doing, I mean, honestly, how do you suggest doing that? Because, you know, I know our biggest opportunity to do that is voting for legislators, actually, like you said.
You can do that. You can do that. That's one way. I think we need to think about, how would I live my life if this was happening to born kids? And whatever you would do for born kids, do for these kids.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Right. So, and I believe that we need to change the culture that makes this acceptable. People are being taught lies, and it's normalized because there's silence.
Yes.
So the lies are ruling out over the truth because the truth is silent. We're hiding the truth inside the churches. But if the churches go out to the streets and proclaim the gospel constantly, if the people of God are exposing this on the streets constantly and crying out against this injustice constantly and educating people, then everything's going to change. Like, people are going to start thinking, wow, these Christians are really taking this urgently. Maybe this is actually murder. Yeah. But they don't believe us when we say it's murder, because we're not acting like kids are being murdered. You see?
I agree. There's actually a majority of people who call themselves Christians who really don't stand up for what's right. I actually agree with you on that.
Yes.
And I've been going to Midway Baptist my entire life, and I find it ironic that you're actually here, because I know the hundreds of people in here who fight and believe what you believe. How
do they fight? How do they do it? What way? Like, where are they on Saturday morning when they're slaughtering children at the murder facility? If it is open on Saturday morning in this area, I'm not sure. I'm not from this area.
Well,
but like, are they going to rescue children from death?
Their tactics are different than yours. I have to say that. But
that's the problem, because their tactics are not in line with the urgency of the situation. Methodology actually communicates a message. So when you use methodology that basically tells people it's not an urgent Holocaust situation, then you're teaching people the wrong thing. You know, like if they were tearing off born kids' arms and legs, I don't think most Christians would be like, oh, I'd better like donate to like some pregnancy center or some like organization that tries to convince people to not tear their kids' arms and legs off. You know, we need a lot more than that, right? Yeah. We need like Martin Luther King marching through the streets, like demanding justice on a national level, like shutting down killing facilities by putting our bodies in front of the door by the thousands. You know, like making national news, like like cultural upheaval. You know, like it means how many street preachers are in this area, like openly proclaiming the gospel on the streets to reach masses of people with the truth that changes their hearts and minds so that they don't murder their kids. I don't see street preachers. I don't see people going out to like evangelize the lost people. I've lived in this nation my whole life, and only like 1 or 2 times has anybody come up to me and said, hey, do you know the good news about Jesus Christ? Like, are you a Christian? Have you been born again? And all these people say they're Christians, but they never do that. You know, they don't love their neighbor as themselves. They don't love people enough to say, hey, you might be going to hell. Let me warn you. That should be happening. If everybody was saying that all the time, people would be like, whoa, like this is real, you know, like everybody's warning me about hell. I'd better get right with God. But nobody's doing that. Very few people are doing that. They're just like going about their business, living for themselves, like doing whatever they want in the middle of a Holocaust, in the middle of a nation full of perversion that needs the gospel.
You're right.
Yeah, so we need to bring the gospel into conflict with this evil. We need to proclaim the good news to everybody, and it's not happening.
Have you read the book Radical?
David Platt?
Yeah.
I haven't.
That's actually pretty good.
Maybe a little bit of it. I'm not sure.
A lot of the fundamental ideas you're bringing up is actually in that book. It's actually a good book.
Yeah.
Because I actually believe a lot of people in this church agree with you that more should be done, but I guess we live in a country where we want to also do things in a way that we don't go back 500 years to where if we cause a revolution, we're not only hurting ourselves, we're killing more people. Like I don't want other people killed out here on the highway, you know what I'm saying?
Nobody's getting killed out here.
If people are driving down the road, what is going on? Bam, they run into somebody. I see it all the time. I've investigated the wrecks involving protests.
I do this all the time.
I know, but I do it for a living too, man. I actually agree with your message that more should be done about abortion. But I know that here at Midway, he is a pastor here at the church, and he would be the first one to tell you.
I'm Matt.
He'll be the first one to tell. He's a pastor. He'll be the first one to tell you, man. And he could probably tell you more what we do for abortion, how we actually, even though our tactics may be different, we may not be on the front lines like you. We're still pushing.
But that's what needs to happen.
I agree.
Everybody says that to me. Everybody says, pastor after pastor, churchgoer after churchgoer, we agree with your message, but we don't agree with your methodology. But our methodology is a part of the message, and it's an essential part of the message. If we're not out on the streets crying out for justice like kids are being mass murdered, we're not communicating the truth to people. If we're like just treating life like everything's normal and okay, it's just another normal day. It's not another normal day. Like, it's a day where thousands of people are being murdered in this nation, all around us, in killing facilities, through stuff that's sold at our grocery store, Plan B. Pharmacies are selling hormonal birth control that murders children. How many people in this church are on hormonal birth control right now? Because they might be murdering their child, because hormonal birth control thins the lining of the uterus, and it prevents implantation sometimes, and it murders children. In vitro fertilization, that's murdering more children each year than traditional abortion. You know what IVF is?
Yeah.
That's murdering between 1 and 3 million children a year. I don't think no pastor will talk about that and say this is a Holocaust we need to address. Like, nobody's doing anything. Like, hardly anybody's doing anything about IVF, and that's murdering more kids per year. And churchgoers are using IVF. They're creating children in the system. They're giving money to this genocidal business. We got to wake up, you know?
I appreciate his passion on it. I really do. What do you think? What do you say?
Now, my question is sincerely, Matt. I have an 8-year-old. He was adopted. I have a daughter that's passed away. our daughter passed away, the doctor, when my wife and I went to the doctor, the first thing he said was to abort the baby. We didn't. She's in heaven. Our son is adopted by God's grace. His birth mom didn't choose an abortion, and we get to raise him now. So I'm very much against abortion, very much against what the Bible says and what you're saying as well. My question is, sincerely, what do you feel is the benefit, like at a church, when you come out here to protest? Because I don't have a problem. I like discussion. I don't know if it's a problem, and I get what you're saying. So, but my question is, like, what do you feel is the benefit coming before church? Because my thought is, to be honest with you, my son's 8-year-old. He knows. We talked through the idea that, of course, he was adopted, and we're talking through that murder is wrong. But I don't want my 8-year-old to see a sign of an abortion at this time in his life. Maybe other parents maybe disagree with that, and that's fine.
Okay.
But a parent that has a 2 or 3-year-old. So, Michael, sincerely, just want to know what's your thoughts on protesting in front of a church? Why target?
We need to.
Target's a bad word, but why passionately go anti-abortion in front of churches specifically?
Because most churchgoers are sleeping through a Holocaust. They're not living their lives with a sense of urgency. Like, kids are being murdered. They need a loud wake-up call. They're thinking of abortion and probably inside this like pro-life box that their mind is caged inside, and they're not thinking about it correctly.
Sure.
So we need to like bring this to light in a different way and be like, hey, like, kids are probably going to be murdered tomorrow in your community. Like, this is urgent. Like, if like tomorrow I know that there's a school shooting that's going to happen somewhere, and I know there's a bunch of supposedly good people gathering in a place, and I'm going to go there and say, hey, we need to take action against this school shooting to stop this mass killing incident tomorrow. Like, that's the level of urgency that we should have. So there's nothing wrong with us coming and saying, hey, this is happening all the time. This is an urgent situation. Please help. Please do something, right? And when people see these images, it changes their minds. It's very powerful. They turn away from murdering their children. It wakes people up. We need to be a loud, bold voice. We need to make a big deal about it, you know? If we don't use these signs, if we take like a slower, like less confrontational approach, it doesn't really, I don't believe that it's that as effective at like really waking people up and making people question the way they live their lives. Like, us being out here makes people question, like, why are they out here? And the reason that they ask that question is because they're not thinking correctly. If they were, they'd be like, that's awesome. Like, these people are here to like expose this evil and ask people for help. Like, they're so concerned with justice, they're willing to go out in the streets and like look like fools in front of society on behalf of these kids. Like, I want to see what they're about. I want to join them. I want to get involved. I want to expose this evil. I want to be bold and confrontational against this Holocaust. So we're here to like stir things up, you know. The Bible says, stir one another up to love and good works, you know, and it's got to happen.
Do you actually think that maybe disrupting a church service would be kind of anti?
Well, I don't know how much we're actually disrupting, and I think it probably is time to disrupt some church services. I think a lot of church services are actually just spitting in God's face. If you read the book of Isaiah chapter 1 or the book of Amos chapter 5, God tells his people that he hates their worship when they're neglecting justice and mercy. He hates their songs. You have all these people gathering in buildings singing songs to God while they just ignored genocide in their community the past week. What does God think about their praises and prayers? He hates it. He wants justice. He says, he says in Isaiah, rebuke the oppressor. How many Christians are rebuking oppressors? I'm not saying it. These kids are being oppressed all over the place. Nobody's rebuking them. Yeah. That's what we need to do. That's what God wants us to do. So I encourage you to do that. I encourage you to think about, how would I live my life if born people were being mass murdered in killing facilities in my state, and they were being randomly like shot in public by their own parents, kind of like parents just like randomly kill their kids through birth control all around us. We can't even see it, you know? We need to think about, how would I live my life? I think we'd have a real sense of urgency. We'd be very disturbed, so that it would move us to like consistent action, like real bold action that reaches a lot of people. We need to reach a lot of people. I don't see churches trying to reach a lot of people with the truth. I see churches trying to bring people in and get money from people and kind of just normalize genocide with silence.
Could I make one suggestion? One suggestion? I bet if you called and asked to sit down and talk with the pastors here, and I don't know, maybe I'm just guessing, and instead of disrupting the service, actually try to get into the leadership of different churches in the area and try to affect the message.
I'm from a different...
Disrupt the church service.
Well, I think church services need to be disrupted when people are just kind of ignoring child sacrifice, and that, like, when it's an urgent emergency situation where like kids are gonna be murdered tomorrow in this area, and they're being murdered right now and we can't see it, and like who knows how many people are murdering their children like through birth control at this church because they're on hormonal birth control. So it's always the time to address this. It's always the time to make a big deal about this. Yes, we can meet with leadership, like my friends can, you know, like, and talk about it.
So what would you say, Matt, is, you know, I get what you're saying. I don't necessarily, I don't know if we see eye to eye on the method. But again, I don't know. Talk through it. So what are you saying then when you come and protest and you try to stir up, disrupt, and not in a negative sense, but you're trying to get this message across? What are you telling people is the next step? What are you telling them to do?
I'm telling them to do whatever they would do in a born person Holocaust. That if they were living in Nazi Germany, if they're living in worse than Nazi Germany,
sure.
Like the population of this nation is full of murderers. Like the bloodshed is everywhere. The blood is crying out to God for justice, and the land is perverted with the blood of over 60 million, well over 60 million children. And so practically, I think we need to be educating our communities about this and teaching them that people have value because they're created in the image of God and that they didn't randomly evolve out of stardust over billions of years. I think we need to be regularly proclaiming the gospel in the public square, reaching tons of people with the message of reconciliation that changes people's hearts so that they don't murder their children and so that they speak out against injustice. I think it means like really being visible in the community so that it stirs